Cool. Welcome everyone. My name is Sean Lyons, and I'm your host today. And we've got a really great afternoon with a cool team to talk us about getting through this lockdown survival tips for caring professionals. And we hope you get a lot from it. We will encourage you to ask any questions or make any comments through the chat box, and the lovely Fiona will be collating those and putting that through to the panel during the session. So we'll try and keep on top of that. But the idea is to keep this light and helpful for people. So we really encourage you to participate in whatever way you feel free to do so. Just kicking off, Faye, can you kick us off with a karakia, please?
I'd love to. Kia ora everyone and welcome. I'm Faye Johnson and I'm part of the team here at Grow, along with Fiona and Sean. As Sean said, we'll start with karakia. He honore he kokorio ki te atua. He mangoronga ki te whenua. He whakaro paki na tangata katoa. Hanga e te atahau he nakahauhau. Ka roto ka tena o mātou. Whakatongi o te wairo o te pū. He e whene, he e tōtō I o mahu. He akahoki I na mahi. Mo tenere rā. And this is saying honour and glory, peace on earth, goodwill to all people. Let us open our hearts and our minds to the learning here today and embrace the togetherness of this learning experience. And with that, I pass back to you, Sean.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, Faye. Really appreciate that. Hey, before we get started, I thought it might be helpful if I introduce our panelists today. We've got my good friend Edmund Otis here. Now, Edmund's a performance psychologist and expert in building personal resilience and bouncing back from adversity. He's high energy. He's worked extensively with young people and adults around building resilience, and really is kind of a man of the time at the moment, as we're seeing right across our communities a real desire for that. He's going to talk about some practical steps we can all take to help get through, but also how we can pass those skills on to the people we work with. Another dear friend, Anna Elders, I've got to know her over the last year. She's a clinical lead for a CBT digital platform called Just a Thought, and she'll talk a little bit about that. But she's a practicing CBT practitioner and a nurse practitioner. A really positively based approach to keeping everyone safe during these times. And I take great store in the things she shares with me on a regular basis. Francis Jamison, a great friend up in the wilds of Ururi Point there. He's a psychotherapist. He's worked extensively in high schools and ran counselling practices within those. And his I guess, superpower is working with young people who are feeling suicidal. He is really competent in that space, but he's driven by a sense of mission, which I just totally love in him. And on that, I guess, Francis, I'll just ask you to kick us off with a whakatoki.
Sure thing. I think Te Reo always says it the best. Whakarongo ake au, ki te tangi a te manu nei. Tui, 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 tuia. Tui ai runga. Tui ai roto. Tui ai raro. Tui ai waho. Ti hei mauri ora. Translated, that talks, if I listen to the sound of the bird, the tui, weaving together, stitching together, all those things from within, all those things from without, all those things from above and all those things from below. Behold the sacred breath of life. What we're hoping for today, we stitch together a whole lot of really good ideas from us and also from the people watching. And wouldn't it be amazing if with ourselves and with our clients, we could instill that calmness of really seeing breathing as sacred? Wouldn't that be an amazing step in recovery and being well and what we're all about? Back to you, Sean.
Sure. Thank you for that, Francis. Hey, lockdown can be pretty stressful for some people. You know, we find ourselves in a place of not our own making, and we have little control over many aspects of it. And it can affect us all in different ways, and we can choose to respond to it in different ways. And I've asked each of my colleagues to just share a little bit about what strategies, how it's affecting them in lockdown, and what strategies they're using personally to get through and find their way through it. So I was going to ask Anna, are you happy to kick that one off?
I sure am, Sean. Kia ora, everybody. Welcome along. It's so cool to have everybody here. This is a great time for us to come together as a group of people working in the caring space. You know, this is the time when most of us are lucky enough to hold on to our jobs, but trying to hold on to our sanity while we continue to work. And, you know, those that maybe get good at perfecting their sourdough or their Sudoku or whatever it might be, you know, work on that. But just to introduce a little bit about myself and where I come from. So I originate from Dunedin, way down in the deep south. I lived in Christchurch and then moved up to Auckland a number of years ago and moved overseas for a while, but came back and called Auckland home and now live in Pukekohe with two awesome, hugely spirited kids. And yeah, a husband from Yorkshire. So that's me. I'm a nurse practitioner by background and a CBT therapist. So I got really passionate into working into the mental health area, I suppose, once I realized that the incredible ability that people have to find ways to live a better life once they're empowered to do so. So I suppose my whole experience came from I'd say a heavy background in adverse childhood experiences myself. For anyone who knows sort of ACEs, leading me into the work, and certainly, you know, I'm very open at being able to share that I have a lived experience myself of mental health challenges and amongst my family. So that's cool. That's a lovely little bow to my string. But of course, talking about just the starting point of this, how does this affect us in lockdown? Holy cow. So, you know, being a carer or a health professional myself at the moment, you know, trying to juggle everything, it's just crazy. I don't know if all of you guys are experiencing the major ups and downs of lockdown. It almost feels like on a moment-to-moment basis, things can shift. And I think my big experience so far is probably one of extremes. We're in our little whānau here, we're experiencing extremes of incredible connectedness and, you know, coming together and supporting each other and loving our time together. And then other times when we just want to rip each other's heads off. You know, times where it feels like there's something really good from this and it's going to come to an end and there's hope and optimism. And then other times where it just feels like, you know, the anxiety takes over and how long is this going to last? What's going to happen for New Zealand? You know, how are everyone coping out there and what does this mean for our future? So I think there's a real mix of feelings and emotions. And I've got to say myself personally, at times I feel absolutely tip-top and then I feel really dazed and, you know, sort of all over the place and a bit, I suppose, overwhelmed by it. So that's my experience at the moment. And so I think from there, I just want to think about, you know, what the heck can we, you know, how can we bring a bit of a kite of whether it's tools or strategies or just approaches that can help us at this point in time, because I think, and I don't know which one of the lovely men that's spoken before me yet pointed out, if we don't look after ourselves right now, we can't support anyone else that we're supposed to be helping. We can't be there for tangata whaiora or our clients or patients that we're trying to help. We can't be there for our children, for our partners, for our whānau, whether they're in our bubble or not. So this is a time, I think, where we're all of our resilience and all of our strategies are really come into question. So look, just for me, the first step is grounding. I was in the shower this morning. I won't go into too much more detail about, that, but being in the shower this morning, I just realized that I just wasn't present. I'd been in the shower, but I wasn't in the shower. You know what I mean? I was in my head thinking about what I had to do today. I was thinking about the deadlines that are due, wondering how I'm going to help my kids with their homeschooling, how we're going to fit it all in. And I just thought, I'm just totally not present at the moment. So, I think the first, and I mean, that's something that, I find myself getting stuck on. That's probably one of my pet things to work on. So, just that point of how do we bring ourselves back to the present moment? How do we create that sense of awareness? So, I think we've all got different ways that we try to ground ourselves, and it's about working out what is, what connects to us the most, what helps us be present. But I think, catching ourselves, and in CBT, part of what we try to help people to create is a sense of awareness of where our mind is at. And with that, where are we at emotionally and spiritually within ourselves? So, at the moment, I'm trying to have regular check-in points for myself. I'm trying to think, where am I at? Whether I'm using like a sort of a bit of a scaling question on a 0, 1 to 10, where are my moods at? Where is my level of anxiety? How present do I feel? And if I notice that I'm sort of stuck up in my head and I'm not really in the moment, what can I do about that? So, basically we know things like just taking lovely deep breaths, coming into our body through some of those practices, and just taking a bit of time out. The other big thing for me that I just wanted to touch on, apart from that sort of disconnection with self that of course creates sometimes a disconnection with others around us, is that sort of the expectations that we place on ourselves. And I think this is the key point in time to be aware of what internal pressure we're creating. We may have external pressures around us, deadlines, timelines, expectations, but I think so much of the stress that we experience on a day-to-day basis, we create ourselves from what we expect of ourselves and the way that we run at things. So that's a huge one at the moment, and having really good realistic expectations. And look, the ability to check in, to bring awareness to where we are and what's happening, and to have more realistic expectations really only comes up through that self-compassion and that relationship that we have with ourselves. So I'm constantly talking to people that I'm supporting in practice, or, whatever I'm doing, any sort of speaking arrangements around our level of self-compassion and that relationship we have for ourselves, that ability to show up for ourselves when we're distressed. And so, just sharing with you guys something that I've been trying to refine down over the last couple of years, becoming a mother. Well, that was 11 years ago, but slowly over the last 11 years, trying to pull together my own resources, I've really realized that when the shit hits the fan, we've got to become aware and notice that distress, and before we respond, and whether it's through, giving ourselves a hard time, giving someone else a hard time, taking any sort of action at all, it's about responding to, thinking, what's going on for me right now? How am I feeling? And connecting in with that distress, opening up a bit of a willingness to have it. And that's something that I think we all need to do. We all need to be willing to have the distress there at the moment, because it's so normal. And then asking ourselves just one simple question of, what do I need to do to look after this distress right now? What do I need? And it's exactly what we would do to a friend, right, or a loved one. So, I think this is the time for all of us to really learn to show up for ourselves right now in that beautiful, nurturing, compassionate way, and tune in and learn to, if we haven't already, learn to listen to ourselves of what we need and be kind. And I suppose, this is self-regulation, right? It's self-soothing. This is the stuff that we're all supposed to get taught as little nippers by our kids, but that a lot of our parents struggle to help us to do. So anyway, that's maybe one of the silver linings to come out of this, if we can all learn how to show up for ourselves a bit more, so that we can show up for our whānau and our clients, or patients and our communities, then hopefully the world will become a bit of a better place. I'll talk to you guys a bit later about our tool, Just a Thought, and some other little nifty little bits of work that you can do digitally and you can introduce your clients to. But that's it for me for the moment. Thank you. I hand over to the lovely Edmund and Francis to continue.
Thanks, Anna. Edmund, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Basically, what Anna said, and now it's Francis. No, but thank you very much. I think this is a great opportunity, and I have some thoughts around all of this. Obviously, from the accent, I'm from the US. My family and I came over to New Zealand on holiday and fell in love with it. And in 2008, we moved here. And in the US, I practiced as a psychotherapist, but also I was in the School of Humanities at the University of California. And I guess my oldest professional affiliation, my oldest professional connection is fundamentally, I'm a coach and I'm a karate instructor. And I've been doing that since I was really small. And when I stopped competing at about 30, I went back to graduate school because I recognized that how well I perform and how we do in stressful situations and how we deal in trying to achieve goals, for me at least, had so much to do with what was going on in my head and what went on with my emotions. And so clinically, I'm trained as Anna in cognitive behavioral therapy, but also in what they call strategic therapy. And I guess the thing I emphasize most, or I think about most, are some of the principles of behavioral psychology. And so what I recognize with that, and when I work with clients, and I know a lot of the people listening are working with clients currently in very stressful situations, just as in sports, so much of what we know is that what we do behaviorally significantly impacts how we feel. I mean, those things work back and forth. But if I can pick some behaviors, some simple behaviors, and participate in those and use those, okay, in a fairly disciplined way, even when I may not be feeling like it, that has a significant impact on how well I feel, because that will affect and pull my feelings along. I think for all of us, this reminds me of sport in a lot of ways, in the sense that if we're working with clients, or we're working with patients or clients currently, as I know most of you are, we are working with them, but we at the same time are in a stressful situation. So I think frequently what we look at is what we're asking of them and how we're trying to help them, the suggestions we may make with them, also absolutely and directly apply to ourselves. Very similar to a coaching situation with a coach and an athlete, or a coach and a team. Okay, what the athlete is going through is very similar to what the coach is going through. And I think in this situation, one of the things I'm really aware of is most of the people having the most distress with this, myself included, find themselves going through between one of two fairly non-adaptive and non-helping mindsets. One is, I find myself, and I'm sure a lot of us find ourselves, really, really stuck and frustrated about why did it end up like this? Why are we doing this again? Why are we in lockdown? Why don't we have vaccination? Why aren't people taking more of it? So I find myself thinking about all the things that I have no control over whatsoever that have brought us to this situation. Okay, all the things. And if we spend a lot of time on that, right, most of you will recognize, that one of the common ways to think about depression is just anger turned inward. Okay, if I focus on things I can't change, can't rectify, can't improve on that have happened, I end up focused in a negative sense about the past. Or the other thing that we're all doing, and again, you see this with sport or anything else where people are in a stressful situation. The other thing we look at is I find myself being worried or concerned about what's going to happen. When do we go to level 3? When do we go to level 2? How long is level 2 going to happen? And so again, you find yourself, and we find ourselves, and our clients find ourselves focused on the future. One of the things we know is that both those things, okay, being focused on the past causes stress. Okay, being focused on anticipating what's going to happen and not having control of it causes stress, right? Because future focus in that way, non-subject focused, okay, is all about anxiety. And so one of the things I try to work on with my own clients right now is trying to find a few behaviors that allow us to focus on the immediate, what should I do now? So in a sports sense, you know, right now, can we be in the zone? Can we accomplish some flow? Working with the Grow Group and working with Sean, okay, also in Hawke's Bay, one of the things we did is over the last 3 or 4 years, I've developed a program based on resilience. And all it is behavioral, right? So as Anna said earlier, one of the things we can ask ourselves, and I try to ask myself all the time, is, you know, what's the most important thing I could do now? And frequently it isn't the most urgent thing, but seriously, you know, what can you do now? The other thing we know that resilient people do all the time, okay, whether they think about it or not, they seem to have a set of values or a way of thinking about themselves or a way they would like to think of themselves. You know, I would like to be kind, or I would like to be patient, okay, or I would like to be at ease with this. But then that question becomes, well, you know, if I was kind, what would I do now? If I was patient, what would I do now? So I'm looking at those kind of things, you know, and I'm happy to dialogue about what are some behavioral things we can do that we do when we are at our best in stressful situations. And so that's basically what I have right now, but that tends to be my focus at this point. Thanks very much. Francis?
I guess it must be. Oh.
That's all you, Francis. Where you go?
Away we go. Yeah, so I've actually misunderstood what we're here. I thought this was about fishing tips.
Sure.
So I thought I got my my fishing rod already for surf casting instructions. Now, what you've got to realise is that fish during lockdown are really stupid. Well, that's a bit derogatory, but there's actually no fish being bothered by boats at the moment. So they come in really close to the shore. So just make sure you have really big baits, twine around the baits, and you'll find if you flick it in, straight away you'll catch something. Hopefully it won't be a dogfish like this one, but this is what you want to do. Now, the trouble is really that we're not allowed to do it. So it's deemed dangerous, so actually don't do that. But in level 3, may I recommend, if you live near a beach, you get down there and do some really solid surf casting. It's good for you. My name's Francis. I've been working in mental health for the last 39 years. I started my journey off with working with people with special needs and challenging behaviours with applied behavioural analysis, and then did psychotherapy at AUT. Since then, I've had the pleasure of working with people from 5 to 70, from very mild issues to personality issues, all sorts of things. My passion is youth suicide, beating it, getting rid of it, and I'm really pleased to have been able to do some of that through Grow. So yeah, we're in another lockdown. It is frustrating. It can have real down parts. It can also have real up parts. And I want to talk a bit about both of those sorts of things. It's been touched on already. What is most important for all of us is our own self-care. How we look after ourselves, because the better we look after ourselves, then the more potent we're going to be able to be in a house with our whānau and also with the people that we work with. Ideally, we have a plan where we look at things like good quality sleep, rest, exercise, really important one, work, connection, mindfulness practice, and creation of joy. We've got to make sure that in the day, we create as many pockets of joy for those people around us as we can possibly create. Very, very important. Have some fun, have some games, have some lightness. Very, very important stuff. We need to be able to access a calm, peaceful state. And ideally, we have that on tap. Some ways of doing that, we can set little goals. Things that when we're at home, things in the kitchen, things in the garden, things around the house. Team building in the home, really, really important. Team building with colleagues, really important. My list includes Tai Chi, walks. I've crossed surf casting out, cooking, music, dance, singing, writing, wood piles, getting to know the neighbours better over the fence. That's a good one because you can still stay 2 to 4 metres apart and have really good conversations and get closer with them. Meditation, breathing exercises, pets, massage, TV, and also connecting with work and doing what I can under the circumstances. Ideally, we all need to try and develop routines, as motivation can be really fickle when stuck at home. In fact, let's chuck out the word stuck and call it nesting time. Let's reframe us being at home as a kind of nesting time where we learn better how to nest and then somehow can put that out there into our clients to help them find good ways of looking after themselves. It's already been touched on. Remember, we can only do what we can. So stressing out over what we can't is pointless. Bit of a Buddhist thing. I know it's a lot more easier said than done, but we've got to be kind to ourselves with our expectations. We've got to be kind to other people around us. We have to look after whānau, personal. We have to look after workmates, but we've got to be kind, be kind, be kind. So the better our self-care practice, the more likely it'll be that we'll be able to help our clients improve on theirs. We've all got to be, and our clients have to be really careful of booze, cigarettes, and any other ways of self-medicating. That can be a real trap in COVID times. And I'm working with a few people at the moment that are trying to keep out of that hole. Mine is food. I've put on 3 kgs already in this lockdown, baking, eating carbs again, which we shouldn't do. So it's knowing your weak points about your various habits or your various addictions. None of us are perfect, but really trying to look after that space. I want to do a big shout out to all the groups because there's something like 400 people watching this and there's all sorts of different organisations. Just showing that you're keen to see this kia kaha for the work that you're doing. Absolutely splendid. I know it's hard times, but to see how many people have joined up gives a real indication of how we want to get it right for ourselves and for our clients. Big shout out to school guidance counsellors and wellbeing programs. So I'm going to talk a bit about how we can make sure that the work we do is as tight as it can be, because some of us are still at work. Some of us are trying to do it remotely, which is really a lot more complicated because we often don't have face-to-face. A lot of us at the front line are under-resourced. A lot of us at the coalface don't have enough going on, and that's something that's very, very difficult to handle, but we're under a lot of pressure. But remember, we can only do what we can do, you know that within your organisation. At the moment, it's really important, I think, to have a list that you can refer to about what you can actually do, particularly in crisis situations. Sometimes when we're a bit disjointed from work or whatever, a crisis can pop up and we might forget really, really simple stuff. Whereas if we've got a list, an actual flow diagram of what we need to do, it can keep us in the zone, responding appropriately, particularly if we're feeling a bit anxious or a bit overwhelmed. We need to have plans to be able to respond to crises, an itemised list outlining this plan. Be sure that management are okay with the lists and share these moments with them. If you're in a crisis that you're trying to manage, make sure that you let management know. So not just can they support you, but they can also share the responsibility of it. If you're counselling online, be sure your Zoom setup is really good, as this is your private home people are seeing. Send reminders to your clients that they can access you. And with each reminder, flick them a few self-help tips and correspondence, as most clients you'll find won't Zoom. Also, you've got to remember that a lot of clients during lockdown are actually okay. A lot of them are in their bubble and they feel quite secure in their bubble, and they may not need us in that time. If you have a digital wellbeing platform, recommend things like Headspace, great app that leads you through meditation and other mindfulness techniques. Also put in things like emails, Lifeline, Kids Line, 1737, youth line, all of those sort of points of contact, so people can have other avenues to go to rather than relying on you, on themselves for help. If you work in crisis, make sure you've got a generic safety plan that you can quickly email to people in need, should they be in need of that. Know your networks. Really important that you know your networks, your DHB crisis numbers, OT police, and make sure you refer in when necessary in this space. And let your manager know you're doing this. And in that zone, managers, please be kind, supportive, and available for contact if an emergency occurs. Really important in all of this work for all of us practitioners, note-taking, note-taking, note-taking. I can't stress that enough. Make sure you document everything you do. It's all accountable. It looks after you. It looks after the client. It looks after the organization. Really important stuff to do. Confer with trusted colleagues. Remember too, particularly if you're ringing into someone's home, it's an opportunity to connect with other family members, parents if you're ringing about kids, provided they're okay with it. But it's an opportunity to actually build bigger networks. See if you can get your client on side with this notion and promote some sort of family support. I just want to talk a little bit about anxiety. I'm going to finish soon. It's a natural response to things that worry us. I'd really like to undemonize it. It's a normal function. It's not a demon. I mean, sure, if it's seriously affecting our ability to function, we need to pay special attention to it, maybe get some extra help. But something I've learned when I get anxious, if I try and figure it out in my head, because my head's munted at the time, I'm not going to get anywhere and it's just going to make me feel worse. So I'd strongly suggest with anxiety that rather than try and, a bit like what Edmund was talking about in terms of negative pictures and trying to figure stuff out that you can't, do something with your body, get out of your head, go and do something in the garden or do some breathing or some meditation that takes you away from what's going on up here, grounds you in your body in the here and now, and then makes you more able to join with nature, mindfulness, and commune with the beauty of the cosmos and to calm it down. It's all about being calm. So really with anxiety, the most important thing to try and do is go, well, actually anxiety is okay. What do I need to do with it now? How do I reduce that? Going into the head doesn't usually work that well. Something in the body or some sort of mindfulness thing. I'm just going to talk a little bit about advice for parents in managing lockdown, particularly if one or more of your kids are at high risk. This could also be if any family member is at high risk. Think of the most important thing right now as being whānau, team building, and creating a calm farm. Safety comes first. Be sure to have a list of support agencies you can ring, and remember 111 if in a real emergency. Police usually respond the fastest. But encourage the 6 areas of well-being: rest, sleep, exercise, work, mindfulness, connection, and joy. Try to have fun with your kids. Play games. Get them to teach you some. Get them to teach you some computer games. Let them thrash you. They probably will, and they'll enjoy that, which is good for the team building thing too. Share cooking. Teach them some recipes. Try and eat at the table. Really, really good family time rather than everyone scuttling off back to their device, back to their rooms or whatever. Try and have some fun family meals. You can do projects for them, exercise, walks. If you know some useful self-help ways like yoga or Tai Chi or a martial art, teach them some. Get them exercising with you. Above all, don't go to war. It's not a time for it. We need to keep the farm as calm as we possibly can. So you want the connection, the positive connection, but you've also got to respect that everybody's going to need some space. And you've got to build both of those things into the day. And it'll move around. You've got to be quite, negotiable in these areas. But if you're a parent, remember you're the team leader. And you've got to model your self-care and try and make sure you keep everyone floating as best you can. For those of us working as sole traders in the private world, kia kaha, financial struggle is upon most of us. Tighten the belt, go for cheap cheese instead of camembert. Look at wage subsidies, family help, even friends. So to wrap up, keywords: whānau time, connection, team building, self-care, looking after yourself, doing what you can with work, being kind, being kind, being kind. That's it from me. Oh, actually, can I do a little self-promote?
You can, Francis. We're running out of time.
Oh, no, that won't then. Let's go.
Okay. Hey, we'll come back to everyone anyway. But hey, Francis and team, it was great, the experiences you have. And you know, some of these things are quite funny as well. You know, one of the first few days of lockdown for me, I decided I was going to take up walking, so the dogs really didn't get a choice. And after we were 4 days into it, my schnauzer, when she saw me wake up in the morning, ran away. Pretty much decided that 4 days into it, and when you're a miniature schnauzer and you're doing 20 kilometers in 4 days, she really wasn't that interested. And she hid until I'd come back from walking. So, you know, they're kind of some cool things. We think they're good for us. And but when your legs are only 6 foot long, 6 inches long, there's not a lot to wear down there. And she struggled with it. So finding that balance is kind of cool, and it quite good from that. And even when I went to pet her later in the day, she bit me. So there you go. You know, that probably wasn't
dog.
You know, accepting that for many of us, we've actually found ourselves at home surrounded by other people, that it's kind of, I think Edmund might have described it to me the other night. It's like Sunday evening dinner where you invite the family around. They just don't leave. They're still there, you know, a week and a half later. And having space around us is kind of something we've all become quite used to. So, you know, just going to ask the panel, how have you found your personal space in this time? And how has that shaped the role that you guys fit in your homes?
Let me start real quick. We're doing pretty well. The first time around this came, and I don't know if anybody else is experiencing this, I actually enjoyed the first lockdown more than I'm enjoying this one. I think the first time it was new, there was a lot of things not going on, but the fact that they weren't going on was kind of attracting my attention. Now it's like, I'm almost over it. I mean, it's fine. But as far as space, there was 4 of us in the house, and 2 adult boys. They had just come back from overseas, fortunately. And the thing I told you was exactly what I feel. The trouble was, it almost felt like Christmas or the holidays or Christmas dinner, where you really want to engage with people. And I'm talking to other people, and they're doing this. But if this is part of our norm, one of the most important things I think we can do is allow people to have their personal time. So, you know, in a normal setting, if everybody showed up for the weekend and then after an hour, everybody went to a different room and stayed by themselves, we think somebody was upset. But the truth is, if you're in lockdown, that may be the healthiest thing you can do. You know, it's okay to allow people. I mean, we don't feel our feelings are hurt, or we've hurt somebody's feelings if they go off to school or if they go to work. And one of the things we're seeing, and I'm suggesting for people, is just allowing them to have that personal time without the expectation is, I have to talk to somebody, I have to make small talk, I have to engage at all times. I think for a lot of people I've talked to, that's one of the major things. If you can do that and just allow that to happen, that becomes very restful, even if you're just, in a room by yourself for a while. So that's the kind of thing. But at the beginning, it was just nuts, because we all talk too much. But how many games can you play every night, right? So we gave up on that, and it turned out to be much better.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, in our whānau with younger kids, 9 and 11, one of the things that I'm allowing myself to do is to let them go on devices without feeling guilty. And look, I think one of the good benefits of it is that they find their mates on there, you know, so they're not, I think it's lovely, you know, we've got to give that time to our kids, whatever age they are, but, you know, I think it's really important that they're connecting in with other children, and they're struggling to do that at the moment. So I think it's a good time to give them that space. And look, the technology is one way that allows them for that, obviously with, you know, looking after what they're watching and how long they're spending on it. But again, coming, you know, at this from a parent, this is where that connection and that teamwork with your partner is absolutely essential, and being able to sort of tap each other in and out. So one of the things that, you know, we're not quite doing as planned as we need to be doing, but, you know, we will do it as the time goes on, is giving each other that break and that time out. So, you know, we've got a dog, you know, my husband, Paddy, he'll say, right, I'm going off to walk the dog. And so that's his time out. Or I'll say, okay, go take the kids down and play football, you know, and that's my way of saying, you know, I need to be able to sit in this space in this house now that I've stopped work and just have that time. So I do think there is something about really planning in that downtime to yourself and making sure that you prioritize it. I think that there's a huge challenge when there's some of us that are working 8 hours. You know, my husband was saying, you don't need to be doing your 8-hour days. And it's like, well, actually, there are things that I can't put aside. So negotiating and looking at what's on our plate. But yeah, it sort of comes around to expectation. I think Francis talked to it very well. It's about being kind. And this is our chance to model and practice what we want to be, the way that we want to be living life, and how we want to help other people to work out that really beautiful way of living that's connected to what matters to us most. This is where we realize what matters to us most. So anyway, they're just a couple of tips from me.
Let me, I just want to throw both Francis, you've mentioned the idea about being kind, which is so true. But for me, when I look past that, I mean, really the essence of kindness and self-kindness, it's all about acceptance, right? You know, it needs to be okay if someone in your household is really hating this, right? That needs to be okay. You know, it's kind of like when we have toddlers, you know, it's both, they fell down, it's an owie, but it's fine. And it's okay that you're hurt. But, you know, my family would laugh because I tend to be pretty bossy. But when I think of kindness, that's what I think of most. It's all about accepting, you know, can we accept how somebody else is feeling and being there for them? And also accepting how, I mean, self-kindness, right? You know, you want to be there and accept what we're doing. Okay, accept your own feeling. Like some days, you know, I've just had it, or some days I'm good. But I think that becomes, you know, kindness isn't always nurturing and care and bringing extra cookies and crackers and are you okay? Let's talk about this. Do you want to talk? No, sometimes I just want to be in my room, seriously, or I'm going to walk the dog, you know. So I tend to translate that into the acceptance thing. And that seems to help me a lot.
Yeah.
I feel blessed. I'm a single parent and I've got my 19-year-old son who's come down, who's a budding musician, plays mean guitar, and is a magnificent beast and a very peaceful character. So I'm a lucky guy. I did have to laugh a bit this morning because being a teenager, he likes to get up between 12 and 2. You know, we've done half our day and all of that. So he got up this morning at 12:30 and I had gardening planned in the afternoon, and his line was, oh, I've just had a shower. I don't want to get sweaty. So with that in mind, yeah, I totally agree. It's important to have a balance of time out and all of that sort of thing. So what we do is we have that time out, but we also have projects during the day. And then we have days, what we call days off, where we don't have to do anything. There's no timetable. There's, you know, there might be television, it might be a box set or whatever. But yeah, very blessed in this household. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm actually enjoying this nesting time. Yeah, should one say that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Totally. So I guess the next question I got really is a little bit targeted more at you, Edmund, but everyone will have an opinion. But, you know, how do we actually use times like this and this time to build our own personal resilience?
Well, I think just, getting through this is useful. But one of the things we looked at in the program we talked about is all based on and what I'm only interested in, resilient people seem to do. It's kind of like with coaches, right? If you're a coach, what you're interested in is what do the best athletes do, and then maybe how can I develop that. So some of the things we see is, as Francis mentioned and Anna mentioned, this whole thing about anxiety. You're kind of future focused and worried, not unnecessarily so, or you can't get over what did happen. A couple of things we know that are really, really useful as a cleansing process, and Francis mentioned this. We've got to exercise. Now, the advantage is if you're not in a very good physical condition, it doesn't take a lot of you don't take a lot of time to exercise, but it's amazingly helpful just to do something that makes you short of breath. Just something, walking up a flight of stairs, 2 flights of stairs, going for a quick walk, doing something, because that process of breathing deeply when you're done, that's what centers you. You're immediately centered and focused when you're just taking a deep breath after you've been saturated. What we know about resilient people is as a couple of the people said, they seem to do a really, really good job of setting goals. Now, it doesn't even have to be long-term goals, but the question always, it seems that resilient people ask this question faster than non-resilient people. What should I do now? Okay, if I'm in trouble, if I'm having a hard time, resilient people literally seem to ask themselves, what should I do now? And then they do that. The other thing is kind of a projection or a construct projection is you ask yourself, and again, resilient people do this. I mean, that's why when you see teams or you see companies, they have mission statements. What kind of person do I want to be? And then the question is, if I was that kind of person, what would I do? So it's always about identifying tangible, doable things and then actually doing them, but not setting the barrier so high that it becomes dramatic. Just little everyday stuff. Being the person you want to be, forcing yourself to do what you would do if you were feeling that way. That seems to help.
Mm.
Yeah, and look, I think some of the things that can make it hard to feel resilience and to sort of gain access to that beautiful way of approaching things and that sort of thought out manner where you can be considering at any moment in time how you're reacting is when you get highly dysregulated, when your distress really sort of gets to that level that it's all consuming. And so for anyone that's like, that's great, but what about those moments, how do we reach that resilience that we may have? How do we unlock it? I'd just say we've got to really think about this, that at the moment, if we think right down to a sort of a biological level, what's happening with us is that we're having a whole lot of hormonal reactions. When we think about stress, and obviously distress and situations and anxiety is much more than just hormones and what's happening in our body, but often quite what's happening in our body really drives further that state of emotional distress and that state of cognitive or thinking distress, and then we struggle to choose behaviours that work. So look, just one simple thing that I've discovered myself, and it sort of really speaks to this whole thing of what emotions can we elicit through hormones. If we think about the practice that we have all around the world of mothers when they give birth, and of course it extends now to fathers too, about trying to induce oxytocin, which is the hormone that helps us to feel safe and calm and connected. And so look, this is a tiny simple thing, but is literally just making contact with your own skin. And I don't know if you can see, I'm just going to pull it down here. There are a few things to trigger a relaxation response in our body. We know that deep breathing is one. So getting a beautiful lung full of air and taking, slow, deep, thoughtful breaths triggers a relaxation response in our body by sending feedback into our brains to say that we're safe. It's almost the opposite of hyperventilating. But inducing oxytocin, that feeling of calm, can be as simple as just touching this part of your chest, which is where we place our little babies after we've had them. It's where we connect to when we have a hug with someone, that can make hugs feel so therapeutic. And just placing a firm hand there and just breathing into it. And I suppose, whether or not it's that, or that it's that reassuring, nurturing part of it, but it is really just responding in a compassionate way, which is what Francis has touched on, which is what Edmund has touched on. When the distress is so high and it's in your face, looking after it at that point so you can access that part of you that can manage things in a resilient way and has those coping skills there. So don't be scared to sometimes lose the plot. I always say to people I'm working with, sometimes coping doesn't look anything like coping. It looks like crying, it looks like screaming, it looks like having a tantrum, and all of that is a part of coping at the moment. So
can I jump in there just for a second?
Absolutely.
I totally agree. People talk about losing the plot or having broken down because they're in tears. Chuck all of that away. That's normal human behavior, responding to situations. We all do that. It's a really important thing. So if we have a cry or if we have a yell, we haven't gone mad. We haven't lost the plot. We're having a catharsis moment that we need to have in that moment most of the time. And it's really important that people recognize that, because society tends to demonize all of that stuff as well as not being normal. Yeah. So people suck all of that in and it turns into depression and even more anxiety. Yeah. Ideally, society would be more emotionally fluent. Anyway, back to you.
Edmund, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to agree. I mean, and basically I think we're all talking about this in a situation that we can't control. It's that menage between thoughts, actions, and emotions, right? And what we want to do, where we feel our best, or at least most contained, is when what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what we're doing are happening at the same time. I mean, anxiety is the opposite of that, obviously, right? We're stuck here and I'm worried in a general way about something else. Or depression, I'm dwelling on something did happen, in the past and I can't quite get to it. So the little things we can do, like I love this thing you did about touching yourself. Absolutely. The thing about deep breathing, because the trouble is, with deep breathing or doing this and you breathe into it, when you do that, you force yourself not to worry about the other stuff because you are in the moment. My thing I like is doing enough exercise where you're gasping for air, because nothing centers you as much as that feels good, even if it's just a moment. But, absolutely, in situations you can't control, all you can actually control is yourself. And it's that acceptance thing. I can't control this. What can I do now?
Yeah. I just wanted to talk to Robin's question about how do we manage when that cathartic moment happens to be at the dinner table with our kids. Robin, I'm going to put my hands up here and say that I model tantrums at times for my kids. I model emotional dysregulation at times for my kids. And look, it's interesting because there's a part of that makes, where I feel terribly guilty and I'm somehow harming them. But look, I think there's, we're often told not to show great distress in front of our children because they can't handle it. But the reality is, I think a lot of them can. And so what I would say to you, Robin, whether it's you that sometimes has these moments in front of the kids or your partner or someone or clients, is to be okay with it. Whenever I have a meltdown in front of the children, I talk to them afterwards about how normal it is, how mum's okay, but that sometimes the emotions get so intense that there's almost nowhere for them to go, and so they come out. And the other part of it is that when they get distressed and they blow out, I talk about and I remind them the last time mum struggled as well, and that it's okay, but I bring it back to that whole, as we're having these cathartic moments, as our distress is skyrocketing and bubbling over, it's about making sure that we look after those around us as it's happening. So, it's very, very normal.
Anna, that's brilliant. And I just want to say, because I'm thinking about what, there's a distinction. So I think so many people make a mistake with their kids and they interpret a timeout as being punished. It's a punishment. I have a great friend who's in the same situation and go, I need a timeout. And they give themselves a timeout. A timeout isn't that you're being punished. It's a therapeutic time to, spend some time with yourself. And maybe you're not in a situation where you should be, with the people who love you most. But I mean, if we're competent and comfortable giving our 12-year-old a timeout, why don't you go to your room for a little bit? I should be able to say that to myself.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to be back. I'm going to give myself a timeout. See you guys at dessert.
And look, it's interesting because whenever you talk to families that have a culture where no one expresses any emotion, whether they're loving, positive emotions or some of those more distressing, uncomfortable emotions, you often hear people say, oh, I wish that we talked more, I wish that we expressed more distress. So, don't forget that actually allowing and being willing to have some of this distress, so long as, of course, we look after ourselves and it's safe and we know how to reconcile whatever comes from it that may be uncomfortable or difficult, is a way of teaching that sort of emotional agility and being able to go with distress and move through it. And I think as you do that, you become better as a person and as a group of learning how to put those boundaries and parameters around it. It's funny, my husband, bless him, came from an English family. They, the whole have a cup of tea and carry on. They don't talk about stuff generally often. And, he's been exposed to there's very loud, emotive part of my family. And he actually prefers a lot of that because you get to the nitty gritty and you can reconcile stuff. So, yeah.
Hey, can I jump in, guys?
Yep.
I just really want to ask you a question that Lisa's raised, and I think it's one that I kind of overlooked, and I apologise for that, but she says she's interested in information about coping whilst being alone during lockdown. If you don't have anyone around you like your family, etc.
So I had that in the first lockdown. Social media, again, getting to know the neighbours over the fence, lots of phone calls, FaceTime to family, lots of activities around the home, pets, all those simple things that bring you joy, trying to have some sort of some goals, some things to accomplish, but also making sure each day somehow I connected with a person, be it virtually or over a fence.
Yeah. And I think it can be tricky depending on if you're a bit of an introvert or an extrovert, how much you need people in your life. I mean, we obviously all need people. But look, I think, maybe there is something about that special time to connect in with yourself. This is where, maybe, we're connecting out as well through Zoom and the neighbours, but also using that time to do stuff that normally you don't get to do. Yeah. So...
Yeah, and I think the little personal rituals. I think one of the things that was most surprising after we went through this the first time, New Zealand was so fortunate because we had this intense lockdown. Then we came out. We were real lucky for 8 months where things were really normal. And the projection, if you remember, across all human resources, all this was how stressful it was going to be a lockdown, which it was for a lot of people. But it turned out the thing that was most stressful for some people was going back. Some people were, I think we need to be careful about projecting what logically everybody will be unhappy with this. Turns out a lot of people are not unhappy with this. A lot of people are very happy with this. And the stressful parts that I've been dealing with is how do you go back when you found out that you really enjoyed that? You really enjoyed being here, you enjoyed being by yourself, enjoyed having that time. So everybody needs to kind of, balance that out. But I think, some of the things Francis said, the personal rituals, I think, are really important. The taking care of yourself is really, really important, the valuing yourself. And, and we are lucky in that sense that with technology, we're able to reach out in ways that we weren't able to before. But I know lots of people who talked about, God, that was the best. I love, I don't want to say anything, don't tell anybody, but that was the best, just being by myself. I had a hard time coming back to work or a hard time going back to the group. So I think that's really interesting,
Have we got time for some quick shout outs, Sean, from Francis?
Some quick shout outs, yep.
Go on, Francis.
Quick shout out. I'm just back to going for pockets of joy. That as I get older, that's the one. Just try and incorporate into your day with your family, with your clients, as much positivity. Simple things. John Kerwin said it the best, keep it simple. Do those simple little routines, those simple little rituals that you enjoy, that are going to make you feel good.
Yeah.
Edmund?
I was just going to let people know very quickly around the tool if you haven't worked out. And I love, there's been some people that have talked about other tools and apps out there as well, some which I haven't heard about. So I'm really excited. But including the Wellbeing sessions. I did the burnout one through Changing Minds last time, and it was phenomenal, the first session. Just a thought free online CBT tool. We've got a Staying on Track COVID-specific course that's really short. It's really lovely. It's got some brilliant little practical-based ways to look after your well-being and some little tips there. So that's as much for all of us to use as it is for us to be promoting to the people that we're working with and supporting. So jump on justathought.co.nz and have a look. It's all free, guys. It's all for New Zealanders. And yeah, that's me.
That's fabulous. And then I'm doing some stuff with the Grow Group around resilient organizations and families. We kind of spend some time looking at how to develop that. And then also for everybody who's in, the helping industry, we're doing a lot of work. There's been so much stress and challenges for medical providers and hospitals and staff, because people are just overwhelmed with concerns, and it doesn't often bring out the best in people. One shout out, the quote I think about every single day, and I use every chance I get, comes from Margaret Mead, is always remember that you are absolutely unique, just like everybody else.
Yeah, hey, that's powerful. Hey, on that note, everyone, we're going to draw it to a close. We'll be back here at 4 o'clock next Wednesday. You'll get the new subject matter come out in the next couple of days. And we'd love to see you. We hope you've enjoyed today. Hey, Faye, can you finish for the karakia and we'll sign out.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sean. And thanks, everyone. What a great session this afternoon. Edmund, I'd just like to say that one of the most wonderful sayings I've ever heard you say that I've really taken on board is just taking a moment to step back and go, yay, us.
Yay, us.
That
Exactly.
is so powerful. No matter what the situation, to just take a step back and go, yay, us. And it's as a team thing, whether it's at home, whether it's work, whatever it is, it's wonderful. Now, that karakia. Onehea, onehea. Onehea ki te uru tapanui, ki waitia, ki a iraka, taikata. Ko ere e rongo, pakaria, aki karanga. Kia tena, tena. Huia e, taiki e. And this is saying, draw on, draw on. Draw on the supreme sacredness to clear, to free the heart, the body and the spirit of mankind. Draw us together, affirm, going forward. And with that.
Cool. Hey, everyone stay safe, be kind.
Thank you very much.
Panel.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, team.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Bye. Thanks.
Ooh.